Saying Anakin did nothing wrong is a bit of an overstatement, but all things considered, I understand why he did what he did. Let me explain. All right, first of all, I don't know what you know about slavery or childhood trauma, but there was 0% chance that Anakin was going to grow up to be a stable human being, no matter what happened. 0%. Zero. He had no father figure all the way up until the age of 9, where he was taken away from his mother to go join a cult, and he didn't see his mother again until 10 years later when she was dying in his arms. I 100% get why he killed all the Tusken Raiders. They killed his mama. He's got to spin the block. There's no other way around it. It's a moral imperative. He just wanted to get himself and his mom out of slavery. These grown-ass men just swoop in and take advantage of him for his talents. They entice him into a life that he does not have the knowledge or maturity to be able to fully consent for. It's like if the NFL went to the hood and started recruiting kids from elementary school, but then they immediately took them and kept them for life. Except the Jedi don't pay them, so it's more like if the SEC did it. Yoda was wise enough to realize that Anakin was too old to become a Jedi. But doesn't it sort of speak ill of the Jedi that they have to brainwash children literally from birth in order to have people that want to hang out with them? Also, what are the Jedi anyway, really? They claim to be these enlightened monks, but it really just seems like they're the government's war dogs. They're basically sentient weapons of mass destruction that are so powerful that they can warp and distort the laws of physics. What part of their job requires them to forego a regular life with a family? No offense, but if the US government didn't allow its soldiers to have families, the UN would have to sanction us for the massive increase in war crimes, and that's just facts. Sure, training and emotional regulation is probably super important for Jedi or for Force users who have so much power, but isn't it conceivable that maybe having a family would allow the Jedi to empathize with the people throughout the galaxy that they're trying to protect? Side note, isn't it conceivable also that there are so many Force-sensitive people out there who the Jedi weren't able to find in time? Or what if a parent realizes their child is Force-sensitive but doesn't want to give them up to the Jedi Order? I mean, it's a pretty natural parental instinct to want to keep your kid, right? What happens to them? Are they just out there with their Force powers, just willy-nilly with no guidance whatsoever? If so, wouldn't it be reasonable that without any guidance or anything like that they would misuse their powers or maybe even turn to the dark side? Shouldn't the Jedi have some sort of reserve program or a fucking internship, a conference, anything to kind of mentor people who are Force sensitive to help them understand how to use their powers in a way that's ethical, right? Like hypothetically, if they choose not to train Anakin, what do they do with him? Where does he go? What if he decided to do some self-directed learning and just started electrifying hoes out here? To be so wise, the Jedi seem to be very selfish in the way they move. They're more concerned with keeping the purity of their club than they are in actually doing any sort of real community service to the galaxy. To be fair, I'm sure these questions are all answered in the extended lore, but I ain't reading that shit. Palpatine, aka Mr. Nutsack Face, ended up being a father figure to Anakin when he didn't have one. On top of that, Palpatine was able to empathize with Anakin's very specific frustrations. Can you imagine everyone around you just drinking the Kool-Aid of this ridiculous belief, and somebody comes in to let you know that you're not crazy, that your doubts are warranted? That's got to be extremely refreshing. On top of that, Palpatine was a master manipulator, and he had Anakin thinking that he would have a power to save his wife that would not have been acceptable under the Jedi dogma. That's extremely powerful, especially considering how powerless Anakin felt in saving his mother. Another side note, in Return of the Jedi, Anakin/Vader essentially kills his father figure, Palpatine, so he doesn't have to be a bad father anymore to Luke. It's basically a story of breaking generational curses, so stay woke, or whatever. Speaking of the original trilogy, why didn't Luke ever have bitches? I know he's supposed to be a Jedi, but he's basically the only one at that point, right? Yoda's gone, Obi-Wan is gone, it's just him, he can break the rules. If anything, he should have learned that the old ways of the Jedi were flawed, and he should be incentivized to break the rules. I know there were some books where technically he did have a wife, but once again, I am not reading that shit. Like really, this man saves the entire galaxy, so that's trillions of lives. No bitches, none? Really? Drip Skywalker's got no hoes? A young Mark Hamill was probably snorting coke off of strippers' asses in the 1970s and the 1980s. However, Luke Skywalker, on the other hand, goes to a forest to meditate and drink some, I don't know, alien titty milk for 30 years? I can respect it. But it couldn't be me. Alright, back to the subject. Mace Windu was a fucking hypocrite, right? Obviously, Palpatine was fucked up. But Mace Windu was like, in the beginning, he's like, oh man, we gotta follow the rules, blah, blah, blah. But then he was the main one breaking the rules. Example, in episode 1, he was one of the main ones to say, the boy is too old, talking about Anakin joining the Jedi Order. Years later in episode 3, he's just gonna murder a politician with no trial. This man is like a cop who plants crack on people after shooting them. To be fair, he was doing the right thing in this case by wanting to kill Palpatine, like that would have probably helped out. But from Anakin's perspective, I can understand why he was completely disillusioned and panicked with how justice was going to be dealt in this scenario. Importantly, Anakin was a boy and you take him away from his mother at the age of 9, no parents, and he's just supposed to grow up completely regular, but also without any partying, any drugs, any girls, any sort of rebellion at all. He's going through puberty and he's just trying to meditate the horny away. Oh, by the way, he has the power to move shit with his mind, and he's not gonna try to use that to get laid or something. Have you ever met a teenager before? Also, you can't really expect this guy not to have any hoes. Look at him. Seriously though, the rejection of love and passion isn't realistic in any scenario. But especially in this scenario where you put this man on a mission to protect Natalie Portman. Look at this outfit. Are you shitting me? Are you shitting me? And just like an abstinence only sign in a Georgia public school health class, this whole Jedi no attachment rule only made Anakin more likely to dive in. Only now he has a complex and doesn't know about contraception. Wait, does the Star Wars universe have condoms? It has to, right? Anyway, this man has been bricked up for Padme since he first hit puberty, so please cut the boys some slack. Think about it, there were no dirty magazines, no websites, no pornography of any type in the Jedi Temple whatsoever while this guy's growing up. My man Anakin is like 20 years old in episode 2, and he probably doesn't even know what a real titty looks like. And the first piece of action he gets is Natalie Portman. Now, I'm not saying I'd cut down a school full of children for a piece of that ass, but I am saying I understand. For real though, he already lost his mother. He thinks Order 66, all of this stuff, following Palpatine is the only way to save his wife. There is no way he's letting her go quietly into that good night. No way. Anakin's one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and he can't have any fun. He can't have a family. He can't have the things that we as human beings naturally want to have. He's traumatized, emotionally isolated, gaslit, manipulated, and ultimately he's let down by this flawed institution that was burdened with meeting his every emotional and existential need. Once again, I'm not saying I'd slice through a building full of all of the people I've grown up with and betrayed the only real family I have left in the most comically violent and bombastic way possible, plunging the galaxy into chaos only to later rule it with a tyrannical empire that had a vice grip on millions of planets and all the people who lived on those planets. But I can understand being a bit disillusioned with this cult that I dedicated my life to and wanting to do literally anything I possibly could to save the loved ones that I have left. That's all I'm gonna say.